Let's talk about mass migration to the Americas. Let's talk about the mass migration to the Americas. Remember, they told you came on ships, right? So what triggered the mass migration of Europeans? The New World wasn't discovered, it was exposed. Europe didn't just find the Americas, they were already hearing whispers of vast lands across the ocean long before Columbus. African Moors, Phoenicians, and indigenous mariners had long crossed the Atlantic, established trade routes, and carried sacred knowledge about the Western Hemisphere. So, how did Europeans get the green light to invade? It happened during the fall of the Moors in 1492. So, the Reconquista was a 700 plus year war to remove the Moors, which were the Black Moorish rulers of Spain. It had ended in 1492. Okay, the reason why they went to war with the Moors is because in Europe, the so-called royals of the whites, whatever you want to call them, of the Khazarians, of those different type of nations over there, the whole concept of their caste system is it wasn't by color, it was by royal class and peasant class. Okay, so their peasants lived very low. Okay, and the Black Moors who were royal did not like how they were treating the peasant class because they looked at it like, well, you know, if they are going to be lower than us and we have more than them, we have more than enough to help them to be better so this nation can be better as a whole. But they don't look at it that way. They look at it like we want it all and we have it all, and they don't get it and they don't need it because they're peasants. So the Moors started helping them by teaching them how to wash up, how to create things, how to make their environment look better. And the other side didn't like that. So the other side said we have to get them out of here. When they found out that we had these strong abilities and we were gods or titans, whatever you want to call it, they were able to take us out and find our maps. We had maps that had all of the hidden parts of the world that we only had access to because we knew how to get through those ports. This is why Christopher Columbus had to sail with Moorish and African Moorish and African like people to help him to get over to the different parts because you have to have connection to the land to open it up. This is what part in the sea meant when they tell you about Moses parting the sea in the Bible. Only the ones connected to this land were able to do that. And it's not physical like they just parted the sea, but we had ways to teleport and get from one place to the next that they are using. They still have access to. That they have made federal lands that we don't have access to. They are under federal surveillance and protection. Okay? So they needed us to make that happen. And that's why Christopher Columbus sailed with one because we had already lost. Okay? So in the Reconquista, this was a 700 plus year war to remove mm, the Moors. Come on, bro. Stop coming up. All right. The Black Moorish rulers of Spain, and it ended in 1492, which was the same year that Columbus sailed west, which is over here. The Alhambra Decree expelled the Sephardic Moors and Hebrews from Iberia, Spain, broke and desperate, back to Columbus not to discover, but to conquer and claim what the Moors had kept sacred. So because Spain was losing, the Black Moorish rulers of Spain were losing. So we were losing our money, and the ones that were left were desperate, and they went back to Columbus and helped him to go and conquer the rest of the world. So when you see the Pope kiss the feet of African leaders, it is a display right in front of your face of the Moors who sold out all of us so that they can stay alive and be at the top. Okay? So when you wonder why Africans don't like you, it's because deep down inside, they know what's up. So they knew about the Americas through the Moorish maps and teachings. So again, because the Moors were losing in Spain and they were broke and desperate, they went back to Columbus not to discover but to conquer and claim what the Moors had kept sacred. So who were these Europeans flooding into America? From the 1500s to the early 1900s, the majority of European immigrants to America were not aristocrats. They were war refugees from European civil wars, peasant uprisings, and religious purges. They were prisoners and criminals, many released from jails to be dumped in the colonies. They were indentured servants. They were the extremely poor, diseased, or landless. And they were former serfs from collapsed feudal systems. So they were people who were coming from famines. Like, it was bad in Europe. It was bad in Europe. If they never found the maps, Europe would have eventually died off and went back melanated because it was so bad in Europe. And this was because of all the pillaging and conquering that was happening in such a small land. And this is why the Moors kept it away from the Europeans because of the nature of the European. But if you ever seen this movie, it's a movie called Gangs of New York. Watch that movie. It's with Leonardo DiCaprio. Um, that movie depicts how New York was when all of the different Europeans moved there and how they were just like fighting and they were bringing all of their pillagey ways in their neighborhoods. And of course, they were poor, diseased, and landless. So all of them were like, look, I'm trying to get to the top. So they were all going at each other's necks. So let's give some examples by timeline of European history. So from the 1607 to the 1700s, British, Scottish, and Irish people were dumped in colonies. Many Scotch Irish, which they were mixed, were convicted criminals and debtors sent to work off their sentence in America. In 1618, King James I ordered vagrants and street children to be sent to Virginia. Many were white slaves before slavery was racialized. 1788 to 1800s. France collapsed, which was the revolution in the Napoleonic Wars. So French refugees flooded Louisiana and Haiti, and they mixed with slaves, trading Creoles and claimed native ties. So they started mixing with our people. That's why you got Creole. That's why they talk like that, baby. Then from the 1840s to the 1850s, the Irish famine. Over 1 million poor Irish migrants due to British imposed starvation. So the British were against the Irish, and the Irish were much poorer than the British. So the British pretty much imposed a starvation on their people by taking all of their food away, burning their crops. Like they literally just made it so bad where they were starving to the point where they were eating their own children. Some of them were eating their own children. That's how desperate they were. That's how hungry they were. They're inserted into cities and used to displace melanated communities. So the Irish, Scottish, but most likely the Irish are the ones that are most likely gingers. They are redheads. They are the ones who get treated poorly by other Europeans to this day. So they are like the lowest of the Europeans on the European hierarchy. They're the weakest. So from 1880s to 1924, you had the Great European Migration. Now, this is when they came in mass number. So over 20 plus million European migrants flooded through Ellis Island. 20 million plus. They flooded through Ellis Island. Oh, my bad, guys. They were from Germany, Poland, Russia, Italy, Greece, Hungary, and beyond. Many are Jews fleeing Russian pogroms, Italians escaping fascism, and Eastern Europeans evading revolution. Okay? So many of them came from all over Europe. They like, there's a new land. That's the land of milk and honey. We must get there. We must get there. We must get there. So most had no citizenship, no land, and no power because their lands had been overtaken But America gave them a false hierarchy above the indigenous black people in exchange for loyalty to settler structure. So the settlers that I spoke about earlier, who were getting the land in the $5 Indian status, were poor, uneducated, desperate Europeans that just was trying to make a way for their family. They were just, so they took a better status than they had in Europe, basically. So this is the British hierarchy. And if you look at it, it's so funny because the one at the top is always the smallest. So you have the British, which is the ones who created all of this mess. And then you have the Northwestern and Central Europeans. And then you have the Southern Europeans, which are the Italians. You have the Eastern Europeans, which are the Russians and the Germans and the Slovakians and Serbians, Ukrainians. That's them. And then you have the Asians. And then you have us, the Aboriginals and Africans at the bottom. The biggest, strongest group at the bottom. This is the hierarchy that they created once they created race. Okay? So how they were incentivized to replace us. They were given free land through homestead acts, land stolen from indigenous Moors and tribes. So when they became settlers, settlers are when they had the covered wagons and the train tracks and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if any of you guys remember, there was a game called the Oregon Trail that we used to play when we was little, and all the time you die from dysentery. You die from dysentery. But that game is if you ever played that game, that's the time I'm talking about that game was based on. It was a big expansion to the west side of the Americas, which is like the west coast, Colorado, Oregon, California, what else? Arizona, yeah, all of that. So they were enrolled into law enforcement. So when we were in air quotes released from slavery or freed from slavery, and this is in air quotes, but when they put us out and they made these black codes, some of the codes was that black people couldn't stand and congregate. It was illegal. So they created law enforcement, which are the police, and they gave those desperate people the jobs. And their job was to watch us and break us apart. So they became law enforcement, military, and politics, and this enforced colonial order. They were taught that melanated people were slaves, not landowners, and were rewarded for adopting this lie. Through programs like Manifest Destiny, they were weaponized as settlers, and settlers were militarized. They were not told the truth. They were given a role, be white, uphold the lie, and you'll prosper. And they did at our expense. Let's go deeper. So this is Manifest Destiny. This is a painting from 1872. If you look at the painting, it is an ideology that fueled European westward expansion in the United States, and its symbols played a critical role in shaping public perception and justifying territorial acquisition. So the key symbols included are Columbia. Columbia is here, and she is a female personification of the United States, which is often depicted as an angel leading settlers westward. Okay, this is when they were settling all over our land after they took it from us. Okay, and imagery and technological progress, like, so they're showing in the picture technological progress, like the telegraph, which was us having the ability to use phones. Like, you see the lines, she putting them down, it's a little blurry, but you see the covered wagons, you see the train tracks, but like railroads and telegraphs. So these symbols were used to portray westward expansion as both inevitable and divinely ordained, while also marginalizing or erasing the presence of indigenous peoples. That's what settling was about. That's what this picture manifests. Listen to the name of the picture. Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny. And also there's an Illuminati card game that was created in the early 80s. And this was one of the cards with Manifest Destiny on it. And they called this card sorcery. They called the card sorcery. It says, God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. Sorcery. Okay? The Global Alliance Against the True American People. These are the enemies, the United Nations. Every single nation that touches United States power today is complicit in hiding the true identity of the melanated American, because the truth would expose that America is not a country, it's a stolen estate, invalidate all United States lands, titles, banking systems, and court jurisdictions, and render most international treaties null and void. That is why we have to wake up. Because you're crying for reparations when you're way what they owe you. The reason why they never paid you reparations is because what they owe you is what you're standing on. So why the hell would you trade that for reparations? Who are they united against? The heirs of the Moors, the Washita, the Yamasee, the Cherokee, the Hebrew tribes, and the original mound builders. These alliances include, I'm about to name all of the nations that are in cahoots for this takedown. Britain, that maintains crown land interests via bar attorneys and hidden trusts. France, still profiting off Louisiana land fraud and Moorish territory. Spain, historically backed Columbus, now embedded in Southwest property law. Vatican, created the doctrine of discovery and papal bulls that authorized theft of indigenous lands. China and Russia, linked to the false native origin stories and secret land deals. So China and Russia are the mother and father of the Native Americans that are playing our role here. They are Eurasian. They are a mix of Asian and European. Modern tribal governments. Many are puppet corporations created by the United States and filled with paper Indians. So all of these nations are standing up against just us. We must be mighty strong. When are we going to realize that? It takes all of these nations that are 10 million times bigger than us. The lie was never about race. It was about inheritance. The world wasn't built on white supremacy. It was built on melanated erasure. Millions of landless, stateless Europeans were weaponized to replace the original custodians of the land. They weren't superior, they were desperate. And the deal was simple. Help us erase them, and you can become us. And now, the true American people are waking up. The lie is cracking, and once the spell breaks, so does their claim to the land, the law, and the throne. That's all we had to do was wake up, but we couldn't wake up because we were under a spell. And I'll get into that in a few. So I'm going to ask you guys real quick. I'm about to do a quick check-in. Do y'all want more? Unmute yourself and let me know. Do y'all want more?
Keep going. Keep
it going.
Hey, don't stop. Don't never stop.
Don't stop, please. Yeah, more, Divine, please.
Ma'am, keep it going.
Okay, I'm glad y'all enjoying this. It's about to get even better, and especially if you're so-called white. Now I'm about to help you see through some things that you were lied to about. So the truth about being white. White is not a race. It's a legal status, a social weapon, and a crown-granted privilege. White didn't exist before the 1600s. Before that, Europeans identified by region. For example, you had Saxons, Gauls, Iberian, Franks, Celts, and Lombards. You had kingdoms like the Kingdom of Castile, the House of Habsburg, and the Papal States. And then you had religions like Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox, or you had names like Pilgrim or Puritan. And then you have tribes or family crests and clans. They were not united. In fact, they were constantly at war with each other. That's the reason why they had the mass migration here, because it was like a way of starting over, because it was so much turmoil over in Europe that a lot of them, they died off. That's why Europe is so small. But Europe was a bloody war zone from the 400s to the 1600s. The Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, Franks, Moors, and Normans were constantly invading and killing each other. The Catholic Church battled the Protestants in the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648, which left millions dead. Spain, Portugal, France, England, and Holland fought endless naval wars over power and land. So ask yourself, how did all these enemies suddenly unite under one identity? Or should I say one nation? Under God. White was created as a legal caste system. Okay, this is from the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705. I really suggest you guys go and check those out because none of this was hidden. None of this was hidden. None of this was hidden. That's the crazy part. It was hidden in plain sight, should I say. And so because they put you through their school systems, they literally didn't, it's certain things they just didn't want you to know, or they made you so docile and lack of critical thinking that when you read these things or you had to study them, it was from their perspective and you weren't cognitively aware that you could not critically, analyze what they were telling you. So the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705. This was the first time white appeared in American law. Before this, both European indentured servants and melanated indigenous people were considered peasants, heathens, or enslaved. There was no solid racial line. But after rebellions like Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, where poor blacks and poor whites rose up together against the ruling elite class, that's when the ruling elite panicked. And they realized something terrifying. If the poor of all colors unite, the elite fall. So they created white as a legal identity tied to property rights, inheritance, gun ownership, the Second Amendment, and protection of the colonial law. So this is why white people can do things and get away with it in the justice system, because that is the promise for them, allowing them to be a bigger nation than us here by playing the white role. So while Negro, Indian, colored, and later Black were legally tied to chattel status, bondage, non-human status, and statelessness, being white became a legal access pass to power, land, and sovereignty, even for those considered poor, trash-tier Europeans. So even with them knowing how desperate the Europeans were coming over here, they pretty much just gaslit them into what they wanted them to be. So they gave them their role and they gave us our role. Because before that, we were commingling happily. It was never about race. It was about access to the estate. The true American people, melanated indigenous tribes, Moors, Washita, and mound builders had land rights, spiritual sovereignty, matriarchal inheritance systems, and access to the original trust of the land. The creation of the white class allowed Europeans with no bloodline to the land to legally bypass treaty obligations, overwrite tribal names and titles, steal estates, copper, and infrastructure, and inherit what was never theirs. White became the mask they wore to claim what they could never spiritually or biologically access. And this is one of our mounds that we built. This is modern day. The first ghettos were not black. They were Jewish and European. This is a Jewish ghetto. You see the word ghetto. If you look up the word, is ghetto is from their languages. So, yeah, the word ghetto comes from Venice, Italy in 1516, and the Jewish ghetto of Venice was the first forced segregated neighborhood. Jews were locked into walled-off districts, curfewed, and restricted. The term spread across Europe, used for the poor, sick, criminals, and outcasts of all colors. So, when Europeans came to America, they brought the ghetto with them. So, the Irish, the Polish, Italian, Jewish immigrants lived in filthy tenement slums. They were seen as non-white, dirty, criminal, and undesirable, and the U.S. elites called them white trash and segregated them from the Anglo society, the Aryans. So it wasn't until these groups assimilated into whiteness through war, policing, marriage, and betrayal of black neighbors that they gained access to the full white privilege. So they went from being treated like this to, if you go against these ones we really want you to go against, then we'll let you get in on what we got going on. You can be all American and eat that good American pie. The ultimate switch, death by classification. The agenda was simple. First, to reclassify the true Americans as Negroes, right? So you had to hit the power source first. After that, you had to rebrand the enemies of the land as white heirs. So you're going to get people that are in desperate conditions over here, and you're going to use their desperation to your benefit. So you're going to play those people into a role by dangling a life that they knew they couldn't get over there in their face, and they're going to take it. Next is to create ghettos, projects, welfare systems, and crime zones to trap and discredit the original people. Next is to sell the illusion globally that black people were brought from Africa and white people built America. Reality, white is not a race. It's a legal cloak of inheritance theft. Ghettos are a European export, not an indigenous one, and white people today are rebranded European serfs who agreed to uphold the lie in exchange for artificial privilege. This is why within the white community, when they lose their job or they lose their status, they kill themselves and their families because they have created this status within the white community that if you can't uphold, you are not worthy. So they become ashamed when they have regular life issues. They don't know how to handle them. I used to say, why do white people kill their whole family and themselves when they lose their job? That's why. And it's sad because it's a game that been played on y'all too. And so when it comes down to it, united we stand, divided we fall means exactly that. If your family has been in America for the past 500 years, you are an American, period. You already been grafted in, and we're going to get down later to show that. But you have to understand that you're playing the game too. So the sooner that we drop this black-white stuff, the quicker we can get back into who we are. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. So let's talk about the $5 Indians. So the term $5 Indian refers to a white or non-indigenous individual who paid to be listed as Native American on government rolls, specifically the Dawes rolls during the late 1800s and early 1900s. So there is no way for us to find our family on the Dawes roll unless our family had like a white descendant. It's like I looked through the Dawes rolls. First of all, they're long as hell. Second of all, we not on there, and it's not. That's all by design. So what they did, after the United States government forced Native nations onto reservations and broke up tribal lands through the Dawes Act of 1887, they created a roll or registry to determine who was legally Indian. And to get on that roll or registry, you had to pay a $5 lottery. Okay? Well, you had not $5 lottery, you had to pay $5 to enter the lottery, and it was like an auction basically, where they will call you your number, and then whatever house was up for auction or whatever land or whatever name and status was up for auction, that is what your family would be assigned with. So it was like, okay, no for the going once, going twice. Then the person put their $5 up, and they like, all right, sold to the man in the blue shirt. And then that man comes up and he like, all right, this is what's on the line. All right, so it's looking like you about to be Choctaw. All right, here's what come with it. 55 acres of land, 4 business. Like, it was literally like that. I'm just trying to paint the picture. I'm probably sounding crazy, but I'm just trying to let you know that's how it went down. So land allotments were given to each air quote Indian listed. So these white people these white in air quotes people who were Europeans that were desperate, who wanted to have something to build in this new land because that's the promise they gave them when they was over there starving and lost in the wars and losing everything, broke and desperate. They told them, if you come to this new land, we will give you this opportunity. And they like, I'm doing this for my family. That's all I can think about is I came over here to build for my family because that's what they told me I can do, and that's all I know. So they made a decision out of survival mode, but they signed a generational contract, just like our people did. So they get into this generational contract, what makes them uphold this status, and that status is killing them every day. This is why the opioid crisis on the West Coast in the white communities is horrible. because it comes with the curse of trying to be something you're not. You too also forgot who you are. So many poor whites, European settlers, and mixed race intruders bribed government agents with as little as $5 to be added to the list, hence the name $5 Indians. They stole not just the land allotments, but also federal recognition, casino money, benefits, scholarships, and sovereign rights, all by pretending to be the very people their ancestors helped displace. Who they replaced? The melanated original Americans. Before red became the public image of a Native American, most tribes were brown to black in appearance and described as such by early explorers, missionaries, and colonial records. But during the Indian reorganization era, the government pushed for racial reclassification. So those who resisted being labeled black were erased or forced to accept freedman status, making them second class within their own nations. Meanwhile, $5 Indians kept the Indian title and became the face of the people they never were. So Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and the so-called 5 civilized tribes were melanated. Many of these nations were Moorish, Canaanite, Hebrew, and Mississippian mound builders with sovereign structures and not teepee wanderers. So we already had a system here. Now let's talk about the Siberian lie. So enter the Siberian lie. I'm not trying to be funny, but these people took a deal. The same way everybody is playing this game according to the role that the Britons wanted them to take. The Brits. So, to make the switch believable, the US and global academia created a false origin story. Native Americans came from Siberia via the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago. That's what they told us. They told us about the Ice Age and how these people survived. That's what they told us, right? So this is a provable fiction, pushed to explain why many federally recognized tribes look Asian or Eastern European in phenotype because they're Eurasian. Why this lie was pushed. One, to justify why today's natives are often pale-skinned, straight-haired, and non-melanated. Two, to replace the actual indigenous, the dark-skinned people already here. Three, to make it seem like everyone migrated so no one can claim original sovereign status. It's the same game. Everyone came from somewhere, so this land belongs to no one. You get it? Like, if everybody have been everywhere, then Christopher Columbus actually did discover an uninhabited land. But that's a lie, because we didn't come from anywhere else but the Americas. We are from here, born from the soil, custodians of the grid, and masters of the ley lines and mound systems. And that's why the earth is kind of like doing some crazy stuff right now, because the frequency of the people who are playing the originals is not matching, and she's trying to get back in connection, and their heart is not matching, because it's really not just the frequency has nothing to do with the color of your skin. You can match the frequency, and like I said, if you have your family has been here since for 500 years and you got 20 generations deep in America, you are American. You are one with the soil. The soil recognize you, the earth recognize you. That's why the human resonance affects all of us. That's why all of us who are awakening have had ascension symptoms, and we are connecting back with psychic powers because we already were. You've been here, so you got that benefit. You're grafted in, like the Bible says. So because of that, these people who are playing a role are federal agents. They have been hired by the United States government to play a role. This is a job they're getting paid for. This is why they get the casinos. This is why they are living on federally owned land and governments, because that's land that was seized from us, and they are PowerPoints and ley lines, and this is why they don't want us there. And they have conditioned these people so badly that they used to beat the children. They beat their children when they said they were Alaskan, or they said they were Inuits or Nanets, and told them, no, you're Cherokee. No, you're Apache. No, you're Navajo. They did the same thing to all of us. So the paper genocide. Once the reclassification system was in place, dark-skinned indigenous were labeled Negro or colored on census and birth certificates. Their tribal affiliation was erased, They were told they were African, and their land was given to white settlers claiming to be native. Meanwhile, the real natives were marginalized, re-educated, and outlawed from practicing their culture. White families built legacies, enrolled in tribes, and passed down fake Indian identity for generations. That's why today you'll see blonde-haired, blue-eyed Cherokee chiefs, while the descendants of real native nations are working minimum wage jobs in inner cities and told they're just black. So why this still matters? Because those $5 Indians hold federal recognition, control casino revenue, own land that was never theirs, get funding and reparations meant for us, and sit at treaty tables and pretend to speak for the original people. While the actual descendants are unrecognized, unprotected, legally stateless, and it's all because we were reclassified and renamed, and they were installed as the new face of indigeneity. Indigeneity, excuse me. You are not the descendants of slaves. You are not a wandering African brought here on ships. You are the erased heir of a stolen empire, repackaged, relabeled, and resold to fit their narrative. The $5 Indian didn't just lie to gain benefits, they participated in a spiritual coup, a ritualistic identity theft on behalf of colonial powers in a Siberian lie. That was their alibi. This is Winston Churchill, a despicable piece of work. And I'm going to read some of him and some other Europeans' quotes that are famous quotes and very relevant. But Winston Churchill had to say, history is written by the victors. William Butler said, it is the victor who writes the history and counts the dead, and to the vanquished in such a struggle, there only remains the dull memory of an unnumbered and unwritten sorrow. Winston Churchill again. History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it. Him again. I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion. And then you have Hitler, the one that they told you was such a despicable person. Well, let's see. America has God's jewelry. The Americans have the jewels of God. The Americans have stolen God's precious jewels. What do you mean, his precious jewels? The soldier asked. Hitler said, America has stolen the Jews, the jewels of God, his jewelry, the Negroes. They are the true Hebrews. What a foolish move and a direct challenge to God. And they plan on moving these false white Jews into a state of Israel. Notice he said a state of Israel because the nation of Israel was created on May 14th, 1948. It didn't exist before then. This is why they are called Jewish, meaning like something. And they are in control of all things in America. He said, because the white Jews know that the Negroes are the real children of Israel, and to keep America secret, the Jews will blackmail America. They will extort America. They will plan for world domination. Won't work if the Negroes know who they are. This is believed to be said by Adolf Hitler in a secret document before his death in an undisclosed location. The real timeline. So let's get into the real timeline. So pre-10,000 BC, mound-builded civilizations and serpent mound complexes already existed in North America. From 3000 to 1200 BC, the Olmecs, which were melanated, built stone heads in Mexico with no Asian traits. From the 1800s to 1900s, the United States government uses Siberian descendant tribes and pale imposters, $5 Indians, to redefine Indian legally. Today, the public face of Native America is Eurasian featured, not the original brown and black custodians of the land. Siberians arriving to America in the 1800s. This is how they looked when they first came, so they have been genetically splicing them for a while. Okay? Were they paid off? Keeping the secret for monetary gain. Yes, and their descendants are still being paid. Many of these Siberian transplants or rebranded Eurasian tribes were given federal recognition, received land allotments, casino revenue, travel subsidies, university slots, and cultural protection laws. They are allowed to hold sacred ceremonies. the original people were criminalized for, and in return, they keep the lie going, generation after generation. We're the real Indians. Everyone else is black or African. That's the lie. But deep down, many of them know they're placeholders. That's why they can't stand us. That's why they're angry with us. That's why they have so much stuff to say, names to call us like Wabo and Pretendian and whatever else. They like that. They like talking about the most blackest stereotypes about hog mogs and chitlins and eating watermelon and rap music. But if you go to their reservations, you will see that they are listening to rap music. They are trying to dress like us. They adopt a West Coast style. And yeah. But many of them carry no ancestral memory of this land because this ain't their land. They don't have mound culture. They don't have the songs of the river. They have no root in this land's vibration because they weren't from here. They are freaking up the environment, the Earth's frequency, because they are playing a role they are not meant to be in. They are supposed to be in Siberia with their tribes, and they are supposed to be connecting with that land and the animals on that land because that land recognizes them. We are supposed to be in our land because this land recognizes us. The reason why everything is off balance, why you have women being more masculine than men, why you have men not liking women, and why you have all of this division is because we are at our lowest in humanity. We have fell into the densest parts of this body. The most dense part of this body is the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is, the root chakra, not the sacral. But we're in the root and the sacral chakra. But the root chakra is what they call Gehenna in the Bible. Gehenna is hell. We have fell to hell. Hell is here inside of our mind, inside of our body when we fall into survival mode out of trauma and desperation. And they have been using this against us because they know the sacred knowledge and they know you don't know it because they taught you. It's just that simple. So we're going to get into the 400-year spell that they cast on us. But again, I need to take a really quick break. So let me pause the recording. All right. Before we get back in, let me know if you want to keep going or y'all had enough. Let me know.
Keep going, Divine.
Definitely, yes, please.
Please, please. We're very much enjoying it. And I appreciate all your research. As usual, you are just on point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it moving.
Keep it going.
As
Keep it going.
always,
Yes,
keep it
ma'am.
going.
This is awesome. Thank you.
All righty. Let's keep it going. So the 400-year spell they cast on us. All right. Let's fix my screen. All right. So we're not just talking about oppression. We're talking about a ritual, a 400-year engineered curse that locked in with blood, contracts, commerce, and black magic disguised as law. This wasn't just slavery. It was a ritualistic, time-bound matrix designed to erase your memory, sever your connection to the land, reverse your spiritual polarity, and feed a system that lives off your forgotten power. Here is the Bohemian Grove. This is where they have been doing rituals for a long time. They are surrounded by like some of the tallest trees. They have like a owl statue. That's the owl statue. But if you look close into these pictures, what are they in? They're in teepees. The same teepees that they said that the Native Americans are living in, which means that those ones that are playing the role. Also, yes, the Freemason sign right there above his head, and plus he's standing between the pillars. Also, how they're posing, one hand in his pocket, him holding his hands, one hand in his pocket. Like all of this is Masonic. Him standing straight, with him right here standing straight, he's an initiate. He's getting initiated. That's what that means. But they're in these teepees. So those Native Americans that they say is us are also were known for living in teepees, which means what? They're connected to this. They're connected to the lie. But they actually go to the Bohemian Grove and have blood letting rituals. They have blood sacrifice, and they have been using us to keep it alive. They locked us into these contracts through the desperation of our ancestors. So all of our ancestors were essentially wronged and played against one another. The prophecy was known and weaponized. In Genesis 15:13, it is written, "Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years." They knew this prophecy, they read it, they studied it, they weaponized it. The 400-year affliction wasn't just allowed, it was constructed. They engineered the system to last exactly that long, starting around 1619 when the first labeled Negroes were documented in colonial Virginia, but many of them were already from here. And then 2019 marked 400 years, and a shift began. That wasn't just a coincidence, that was a spiritual expiration. And the crazy thing is, right after 2019, what they hit us with? The COVID. COVID was a distraction because the light code lockdowns that they had us under, where we couldn't receive the frequencies from the moon, the sun, and the stars, they in the planetary changes, we couldn't receive codes because they had us under the 400-year curse that had light code lockdowns. So we were not getting frequencies downloaded into us to help us to wake up. So they come out with in 2020 with COVID. COVID has this shot that goes into your system and has spike proteins, and is made from a substance from the bottom of the sea called luciferase, which is like the glowy stuff. Is what makes the fish and the life under the ocean glow. They put that inside of it. It's kind of like similar to in nanoparticles and spike proteins, and they put it into your system and gave you boosters of it because it was supposed to disconnect you from the part of you that was waking up, which was the God part. So they put a venom inside of you, like on Spider-Man. You know how you got the black Spider-Man, and he looked like Spider-Man, but he black and his name Venom, and he is like a parasite that takes over your vessel. That's what they injected into the people. That there. But here's the twist. Here's the twist. They needed the 400 years to be completed to fully claim the estate of the original people. Our land, our gold, our name, and our divinity. So, and they knew it would take them 400 years to do the whole thing. How the spell was cast. Renaming rituals. Your names were changed. So suffixes like Bay, El, Ali, Shabazz, Amma, Zion were erased or replaced with European surnames. This was done through baptism, census, schooling, and military enlistment. Ritual renaming ceremonies disguised as legal process, like getting married. And this was to remove your name, and it was to cut your line. So once you lost your name, you lost your identity. Because we didn't have first and last names, because first and last names are corporations. Next, it was a paper genocide. So they labeled you Negro, colored, black, white, all that kind of stuff. And then African American, each one is a lower jurisdiction than the last. So birth certificates, marriage licenses, death records, all contracts binding you to the corporate fiction. Every time they named you, they bound you deeper into their matrix. So every time they had you write your name on your paper at the top in school, and if you didn't do it, they fussed at you. First, when you was in the little grades, you could just write your first name. But when by the time you got to second grade, they had you writing your first and last name. But you sometimes slip up and just write your first name, and then your teacher be like, "I marked you down because you didn't write your first and last name." And you be like, "Literally? Really? Like, just because next time write your last name. You have a first and last name." That's indoctrination. C, commerce and sorcery. They created a straw man, your all caps legal fiction, and tied it to your birth via registration. You were bonded as a surety for the United States debt. Your labor, energy, and spiritual inheritance became commodities on global markets. That's why they trade you on the stock market. This is why the financial system cannot let you remember who you are, because you are the credit. Education is indoctrination. You were taught to worship your oppressors, hate your ancestors, and fear your own power. History books began at slavery. The truth of your empires, the mound builders, Moors, Washita, Olmecs, Canaanites were erased. That's not education, that's ritual disassociation. This is every way they cast the spells on us, guys. Time, numerology, and celestial cycles. The 400-year spell aligned with Saturn returns like karma and bondage, Pluto cycles, death and rebirth, and the Great American Eclipse of 2017, which spiritually marked the beginning of the end for them. These elite forces use occult science, planetary alignments, bloodlines, and ritual dates, not religion. You were never in a racial war. You were in a time multidimensional lockout until now. And that's why it was called Operation Lockstep. They literally repeated the same thing over and over and over again, but just turned it up a notch. What the spell did to us. It made us forget we were landowners, not refugees. It made us see ourselves as descendants of slaves, not custodians of the earth. It made us call on gods that weren't ours, wear names that weren't ours, and claim continents we didn't come from. And the most painful part is that it made us fight each other while our true estate sat in silent limbo waiting for us to awaken. All of the souls who died behind the name Black. Not just by the European, but by his own kind. Breaking the spell. The 400 years ended in 2019, spiritually, legally, and cosmically. Since then, systems have crumbled. Truth is being exposed. You're remembering your names. You're reclaiming your trust, your land, your frequency. But here's the truth. They counted on us staying asleep even after the spell expired. That's why I said there's casualties in every war, because some people are not going to wake up. The expiration didn't set you free. Awareness did. Only by remembering who you were before the bondage can you override the spell after its expiration. So you have to, anybody who is going through these processes, this is why other teachers that's teaching this ain't getting people to the promised land. It's because they're not going into it in this level of depth that I'm taking it into. They are surface leveling you, they repeating and regurgitating old outdated information, or they're egotistically cussing you out because you don't know what habeas corpus mean, or habeas corpus, whatever, how you say it. They egotistical. That's my point. To be free, you have to see through every lie that they told you. So you literally have to break through every system, or you're not going to be free doing just status correction in private banking. You're going to still run the same cycles that they put you in because you refuse to break through this matrix as a whole. When you wake up, you cannot go back to sleep. If you do, you never really woke up. This was never about racism. It was about spiritual inheritance. And the 400-year spell was their last line of defense. It's broken now. The only thing left is to step back into your rightful role as lawful heirs, divine nation builders, custodians of this land, and living proof that the illusion has failed. So instead of you trying to preach to everybody and tell them what they should do with their lives, you have to just do it for yourself and be the change you wish to see in the world. So and I will say this, everybody is racist. I don't care what nobody says. Everybody who believes that their color has some type of stereotype about the next race or some type of ignorant thing to say about the next race. I've said things about different races myself. I'm not gonna lie. I've said some racist stuff. I have. Because I thought I was Black and I thought I was a slave. And it pissed me off and it made me angry at everybody that didn't look like me. So yes, I said some choice things about other people. I was raised by people who, my father was the main one talking about the white man, the white man, the white man. So, and he told me stories about how he had to fight just to go home from school and go to school. So fight white boys. So yes, I've said racist things. But when I learned the truth and I found out that none of this, like literally, they tell you in the Bible in the story about Noah's sons, is he had three sons and three sons represented three nations. One nation was, and we were all related, but one nation was lighter with straighter hair. One nation was brown with softer, curlier, woolly hair, and the other nation was burnt black. That's what it said. So we've always commingled and we've always coexisted. It's just that we let a small group of defiance become the controller of all of us. Let's talk about the war on bloodlines through eugenics, Moors, and the weaponization of the womb. What they couldn't conquer by force, they infiltrated through sex, marriage, miscegenation, and genetic dilution. Now I'm going to talk about how we've been commingling. So how the Moors lost their nobility. The Moors, originally the black nobility of Europe, held royal seat in Portugal, Spain, Sicily, and France. Power in navigation, mathematics, medicine, and law. The spiritual sciences of alchemy, astrology, and sovereignty. But by the 1400s, 1500s, the European crusades against the Moors intensified, not just militarily, but genetically and socially. Let's talk about how. Let's talk about a few of the events that took place with the Moors losing their nobility. So the fall of Granada in 1492 was the end of Moorish rule in Spain. So during that time, they lost their rulership. Next was Alhambra Decree in 1492, which was the expulsion or forced conversion of Moors and Hebrews. So this is when they had to either come in with the other nations and help them to conquer the others, or succumb to their rebellion, which means get killed. European interbreeding strategy begins. So this is when Moors are forcefully converted, and then what converted mean they are put into the armies with the Europeans who won. So they're put into their armies, and then once they become one of their members, then they are given to European women, or what European women are given to them to break their bloodline sovereignty. So they had intermingled with nations outside of their own, and that's dangerous when it's a war going on. So nobility was not just in title, it was the blood. So once the blood was mixed, the royal claim could be erased. Let's talk about eugenics and the science of white supremacy, because that's what it is, and that's what it was. And it still exists in some small way in our medicine or medical, however you say it, system today. But eugenics is a pseudoscientific belief that certain bloodlines are superior or should be preserved or enhanced, while others should be diluted, sterilized, or destroyed. This was founded in 1883 by this strange-looking creature, Francis Galton, which is the cousin of Charles Darwin, which is the one who said that we came from monkeys, which that was all scientifically guessed pseudoscience, and he was not talking about everybody, he was talking about his species. So popularized in the early 1900s America is when this was eugenics was a thing. Planned Parenthood is one of those creations of eugenics, by the way. But it was funded by the Rockefellers, Carnegies, and Harrimans. Their targets was melanated Americans, which was us, Moors, indigenous tribes, that was us, and feeble-minded, which that's what they called the Europeans, the other European nations, the poor, desperate European nations. They called them feeble-minded because they called them dumb, poor or rebellious populations. And so race mixing was not banned to protect white blood. It was carefully regulated to breed out black sovereignty and spiritual genetics. So when they had breeding, forced breeding, it was only to dampen the bloodline. That was all it was about, because the sovereignty is in the blood. They use white women as wound weapons, and I call it the Delilah strategy. The reason why I call it that is because in their book that they wrote about us, they told you a story about you and what happens when you mess with someone outside of your nation. So the blueprint is Delilah and Samson in the book of Judges. Okay, so in the biblical book of Judges, Delilah was sent to seduce Samson, discover his source of power, and deliver him to his enemies. It was a seduction and an espionage mission. She used intimacy to extract secrets, and this was not just a story, it was a template, because this is how they moved, and this is a war tactic in Europe. So this applied to the Moors. So during the Inquisition and the Reconquista, many white Christian women were used to marry or sleep with Moors, to spy on their Moorish households, to extract esoteric knowledge like pillow talking, to dilute bloodlines through children, and to destroy dynasties from within. So these weren't just interracial relationships, these were covert ops. They were sent on a mission. They were spies. Spies in your own bedroom. It's still happening to this day because it is a part of European, um it's just a part of who they are. You know how some people just have ways based on their culture, and that is a part of their culture. So that's how they get down. So the modern version is bedwenching and curiosity. So from the 1600s onward in America, this strategy evolved into white women being sent to study or seduce powerful black or Moorish men, especially those who had natural leadership abilities, access to land or wealth, or strong tribal or spiritual ties. They called them sex mercenaries. They would enter the family through children and gain access to family dynamics, cultural weaknesses, and secrets about lineage, behavior, and power. So the children born from these unions are often claimed by the state, used to confuse succession and identity, or eventually used as mouthpieces against the community that they came from. So instead of them talking for the so-called black community, they will become a part of the community that seems like they have a better life, the so-called white community. This wasn't love. This was bloodline intel collection. So this has been going on for a long time. There's some pictures here that I'm showing you. It's just a part of, remember I told you, the Europeans that came over were desperate, and they were coming from desperate circumstances. They came here to make a way so that they can survive and have their families. So they took deals without realizing that these deals were contracts, spiritual contracts that put them into certain archetype to make them do things that they're doing. So a lot of this stuff is deep ancestral contracts that need to be broken. So how race mixing became a tool to steal spiritual DNA. So the melanin rich bloodline, hold on. Oh, my bad, guys. I don't know what happened to my screen. Oh, it closed out. Hold on. Let me pause it real quick. All right, we back in. Sorry about that. All right, so let me see. Where was I? So the race mixing. So the melanin-rich bloodline is encoded with memory, inheritance, ancient knowledge, resistance to mind control, and spiritual sight and sound code. So mixing it with non-melanated blood diluted the carrier frequency. So they weren't trying to stop mixed babies. They just were trying to neutralize gods. So the goal was always to steal the inheritance and breed out the resistance. That's why they put us in jail in mass numbers when we were standing up and creating our own communities and stuff within our community that was like empowering us to come back to what we were. They had COINTELPRO stop that, and when COINTELPRO stopped it, they that's when they had the private prison thing in the 13th Amendment, and they start putting them in jail and feeding them heavy metals to make them docile. So they use love as a weapon because at one point in time, like I said, we commingled with European people or lighter skinned people. Like I said, they were albinos. So they wasn't European is just a thing, like it's a construct like everything else. But they were albinos, and eventually they started messing with DNA. They have been splicing DNA for a long time, mixing it with animals, and it's a European community called the Basque people, Basque, and they have drunk and did different experiments with rabbits in their blood so much that they have a gene, I think it's Rh positive or one of those, where it make it where when they get pregnant their bodies attack their baby, so they have to be on a certain medication so that the baby won't be attacked. And this is just from them splicing with their DNA and doing stuff they don't have no business doing. So the 1924 Racial Integrity Act. This Virginia law created the one drop rule. If you had one drop of Negro blood, you were non-white. This started the forced sterilizations of melanated women, and they would go to the doctor and think they just getting a regular checkup, and when they done, whatever they was doing was done, they would get told that they were sterilized permanently, and they would give them some bogus reason why or no reason at all. And they was doing this against people's will. Also, criminal penalties for interracial unions. So if a black or white person was together, they were criminalized. This was 1924. Okay. But here's the twist. They only enforce this for unions that preserve the sovereignty of the melanated parent. So if that parent still had they were still connected to their identity and their royal line, then they would usurp that. They wanted that. But when the offspring could be used or absorbed into whiteness, it was okay. They was cool with that. They just wanted to know, like, there are ones to this day who are mixed, who are flip-floppy. They play both sides against the middle. They look more European than they do indigenous or African. And that's by design. I really wish I would have put in the different classifications that they used to classify, and I might do it. I might add it in like later on just to show y'all because I did bring it up, but there was different classifications that they put you in when you were mixed. So you could be like, depending on how much Negro blood you had. And that's why they said, well, forget it because it's too much of this. Because at first it used to be like half, 1/8, a quarter, like it used to be like that, and they had different names like meludgeons, like it mongrels, like it was different names for different ones. And so instead of them saying, oh, instead of them doing that, they just said this is too much. Let's just say if you got one drop, and one drop wasn't even exactly about the blood, it was about how you looked. So if you look one drop too black, you a Negro. This is the one, Sir Francis Galton, again, who started the eugenics thing. And this is the legacy of weapons of supremacy. So this is when that supremacy stuff came into play. Okay? This is when all of that came into play. From 1822 to 1911, the cousin of Darwin coined eugenics. Okay? From inquiries, this is a book that he wrote. From Inquiries into Human Faculty, which was written in 1883, and Hereditary Genius in 1869, this is what he said. There exists a sentiment against the gradual extinction of an inferior race. He promoted selective breeding of the elite, positive eugenics, and elimination of undesirables, which is negative eugenics via sterilization and immigration control. So, if you know anything about the Britons and how they keep their royalty within their bloodline, they intermingle with cousins and siblings. So if you look at this man's features, there are certain things that are a dead giveaway as to let you know he was an inbreed. First of all, the way his lips are and the chin, the way the chin is, you can look this up. This is an actual scientific thing where they can tell if you've been I forgot what the chin is called, but they can tell if you have been mixed with your own blood because it is certain genetic markers and looks, physical features that come with that. You know how like they say people who have ADHD or autism have certain facial cues or features that can point that out. Well, it's the same with inbreds, and that is a big thing in Britain, in their royalty. This is another one. Arthur de Gibonneau. I think he was French, and his has an essay on the inequality of the human races. He wrote this in 1853 to 1855, and he claimed that the white race originally possessed the monopoly of beauty, intelligence, and strength, and that race mixing led to the collapse of civilizations. This was his ideology. He also too had the look. And then you had Madison Grant in The Passing of the Great Race written in 1916, where he called for sterilization of social failures, which are people who were poor. And he urged segregation and quarantine for non-Nordic races in ghettos. So he was for Nordic are the ones that are considered Aryan, blonde hair, blue eyed. Yeah, that's the ones. But anybody that didn't look like that, he would put them in the ghetto, or he was for that. And it says these men built a pseudo-scientific legal framework that enforced forced sterilization, anti-miscegenation laws, and immigration quotas, all to enforce white supremacy legally. So that was the beginning of the white supremacy thing around that time. It started in the late 1800s. Race mixing, a covert genetic infiltration. So these ideologies viewed mixed race offspring as genetic threats. Gibbonneau warned that interbreeding led to the downfall of civilizations. Grant and Galton pushed laws and incentives to prevent or dilute it. But when it served control, race mixing was weaponized, especially via the womb. So they used again that white women as womb weapons. And a lot of times it wasn't the white woman that wanted to do it. They were forced into it because of the patriarchy and the patriarch society that they had and what would happen to them if they didn't do it. So they had to do things they didn't want to do. So while not detailed in eugenics texts, the Delilah narrative is embedded in European religious and colonial strategy. So in the book of Judges, it chronicles how Delilah seduced Samson to uncover strength and betray him. And similar narratives appear in Jesuit accounts from conquered Moorish Spain, where white women were paired with Moorish men to extract secrets and produce half-blood heirs that carried diluted genetic lines. And that's how they was able to steal the royalty. This covert protocol was carried into the Americas during and after 1492. It was reinforced via colonial anti-miscegenation laws, which criminalized black fathers, not white mothers, allowing majority white children with powerful traits to rejoin white society while suppressing darker lineages. This is the Kardashians and all of their mixed race children. The only one that doesn't have mixed race children is Courtney, so don't look at her, but all of them have children by Moorish indigenous men. So thus the Delilah system grew. So one, they seduced powerful Moorish men. Oh, and by the way, they are Armenians, so they are from Armenia. That's over there by like Georgia and Turkey. So they are like Turkish descent. So thus the Delilah system grew. One, seduce powerful Moorish black men. Two, bear children. Three, identify strengths for that economical strength, spiritual, political strength. And four, erase the father's power legally, culturally, and spiritually. And that's what happened to Kanye West, didn't it? Eugenics-driven sterilization programs. So from 1910 to 1970, disproportionately targeted melanated women and women in general, breaking generational bloodlines. You see, as a white woman right there fighting for the same thing because they were also targeting them as well. This is where feminism came from. Well, feminism actually came from the Salem witch trials, but we'll get there later on. I don't want to move up too far. So eugenics created the blueprint for legal white supremacy with its own vocabulary, science, and legislative system. Race mixing control served dual roles. It was to erase power through dilution and identify genetic advantages to co-opt. So white women through sanctified marriages and reproduction were colluded with or co-opted to house the infiltration. And colonial and segregationalist laws protected this model, ensuring white identification and inheritance remained intact even as they dismantled our lineages. So by design, some of them purposely get with black people just for the blood. You ever wonder why Africans are so loyal to Europeans, but not so loyal to us? Let's talk about it. So the African loyalty to the European crown, this is historical context. In pre-colonial times, before colonialization, many African kingdoms had tribal rivalries, blood feuds, and power struggles. Complex trade systems, including with the Moors and the Hebrews, long before Europe ever showed up. Spiritual systems that knew who the American people were and didn't call us African. So when Europe stepped in, The Europeans, especially the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and English, didn't initially conquer Africa. They made deals. They set up trading posts, bribed local chiefs, supplied weapons, mirrors, cloth, alcohol, and guns in exchange for prisoners, outcasts, or rivals, and introduced Christianity with contracts of peace that were really treaties of spiritual surrender. So don't you know when they used to tell us that we was from Africa and they say your own brother sold you into slavery? That wasn't for us. That was for them. Their chiefs literally was giving them to the Europeans in exchange for weapons and stuff. And if you go into the history of things that happen in Africa to this day, that's why the little kids 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 walking around with AK-47s and AR-15s because that's still happening. They still are giving away. Why do you think so many of the children in Africa go missing? They still giving away their people for gifts from the Europeans. So some African kings became addicted to European relationships. That's literally why. And again, why? Because the Europeans made them feel chosen, powerful, and closer to God. This is the origin of the loyalty. They were not enslaved immediately, they were seduced into allegiance. So colonial programming, divide and control. When colonialization got real, which was in the late 1800s, the Berlin Conference between 1884 and 1885 divided the African continent like a pie, with 0 African leaders present. So from that point forward, that's when European colonizers educated African elites in European schools. So when the French, the Chinese, the Russian, and the Britons all decided, hey, you take this part of Africa, we take this part of Africa, we take this part of Africa. That's why some parts, like in Nigeria and stuff, they speak French. But they split it up like that. And then the Europeans said, hey, we're going to give y'all school because y'all don't have schools. We're going to bring our missionaries over here and teach y'all about Jesus and how Jesus is going to save you. And yeah. So they created that relationship with them. So anyone who resisted was killed, silenced, or labeled uncivilized. And those are the tribes that are to this day still living according to the way they were living when the Europeans first came over there. So they are the tribes that you're not gonna see on TV because you can't even get close to them. I'm not talking about like the Maasai and all of them. They allow people to come into their village and record them. I'm not talking about them. That means they taking deals. I'm talking about the ones that if you even get close to their islands, they're gonna shoot you down with bows and arrows. They're the ones who would label uncivilized and they don't mess with. So by the early 1900s, many African nations had European flags, European governors, Christianized tribes, English, French, and Portuguese as their main languages. And this created a caste system where being closer to whiteness meant survival, money, and power. And to this day, that's how Africans look at Europeans. That's why Africans are very heavily intertwined or intertwined with European culture. That's why they move to all parts of Europe. They don't like they come here, but it's certain ones that come here. A lot of them are in Europe and Canada. Why Africans were taught to hate African American blacks. Colonizers needed to break any future Pan-African unity, so they taught Africans that American blacks were slaves and low class. They are lazy, violent, unspiritual, and disconnected from tradition. They were not real Africans because they didn't know their tribe. And even in the 1950s through 1970s, during African independence movements, American black visitors were often disrespected or dismissed by colonial-minded elites, seen as culturally arrogant or westernized, and feared because they represented rebellion, revolution, and anti-colonial thought. Africans were trained to think, they don't know who they are. We stayed on the continent. We are the real ones. But in truth, many African leaders were sellouts wearing tribal clothes, educated and funded by the very Europeans who destroyed their ancestors. So sad. You see how they play all of us against each other? So the spiritual root is jealousy, amnesia, and identity theft. Deep down, many Africans carry a subconscious jealousy and guilt. And jealousy because American blacks became global cultural leaders despite captivity. So despite all the stuff we've been through, we still was making stuff shake all over the world. Guilt because some African tribes helped sell, track, and deliver other melanated people to European powers. So instead of reckoning with the history, they mock our pain by saying, "You are not African. You do not know your tribe." And they project shame as superiority, like, we are kings. You're just descendants of slaves. And they ignore their own colonized minds while pretending they've kept tradition. And yes, it stings because we got the same color, we got the same similarities, but they're the only group that truly we are the only group that truly preserve the soul of the ancestors' music, resistance, rhythm, innovation, resilience. And that's why they list us as the so-called Black American, or they just started calling us that, African Americans. And they know it. And so it's a lot of jealousy behind it. In modern times, and why it still persists, it's called the divide and conquer. This system keeps us divided by promoting African immigrants in America who speak against us, foundational Black Americans. That's what they call FBAs. Um, Offering them jobs, scholarships, and social status if they align with whiteness. Why do you think they come over here and they say, you guys are lazy? We come over here and we do everything. But when you go in their countries, you guys are the majority, and yet the Europeans, the minority, are running everything over there. So, who's the ones lazy? I don't think it's us. But they come over here and they get these degrees, and then they start treating us like crap and calling us dumb. Black Americans are stupid, and saying all of this rude and ignorant stuff because the closer that they can be to European, the better for them because of how they have been bribed and brainwashed over time. So that is a spiritual contract that they are under. So encouraging Black Americans to embrace Pan-Africanism with no reciprocity. So you got people like Dr. Umar and other Pan-Africans who keep telling you, you are from the motherland, you need to go back to Africa, you need they are your brothers, and telling you this, but there is no benefit for us to go to Africa other than us saying we went to Africa and it's a beautiful land. Other than that, there's no benefit. And also pushing the narrative that all Black people are one while Africans are taught that American Blacks are foreign. And also another thing, how can all Black people be one when we come from different nations, but all white people are not one and they come from different nations? And you talk to a lot of so-called white people in America and you ask them about like their origin, and they'll tell you the exact place that their people came from. They know, oh, I'm German and this, I'm Dutch and this. They know. So you see what I'm saying? It's just they forgot their roots as well. So African loyalty to the European isn't love, it's indoctrination built over centuries of psychological grooming, religious trickery, political bribes, and the rewriting of ancestral truth. And the hatred toward American Blacks is a deflection of pain, guilt, and envy. Pain that they were colonized too, guilt that they helped betray their kin, and envy that we are still the cultural and spiritual leaders of the melanated world. But don't take it personal. It's not about you, it's about the spirit you carry. And when that spirit wakes up fully, the illusion will burn, the truth will rise, and the real reunion will begin without middlemen. They just have to accept that they are not in a position to do what we've done. And it's okay. Everybody got a different job, and it's like everybody trying to play a job they not meant to be in and keep kicking us down, and it's like allow everybody to play the natural order of things and the world will be what you want it to be. Stop trying to cosplay as something you're not. Just be happy with who you are. Everybody is committing identity theft, including us calling ourselves Black. Let's talk about poor whites. Poor whites were never the chosen, they were the tools. Most of the white people who came to, and it's in air quotes, so most of the white people who came to America in the 1600s to the through 1800s weren't aristocrats. They were peasants, debt slaves, criminals, religious refugees, indentured servants, and often seen as expendable by their own kings and clergy. Literally, these are the ones who were so poor that their leadership in their country said, we got to get them up out of here, get them off my land. I don't care where you take them, just take them from here. They are a burden. Because that's how they treated their people in Europe when they were poor. They were told, if you come to the New World, you'll have land, freedom, and wealth. But what they were really brought here for was military backup against the indigenous, because one of the first departments, I already said this, but I'm going to say it again, one of the first departments that was started when the United States decided to prick their pears into our land was the Department of War, later changed to the Department of Defense. And they needed people to fight their wars. So who else would be better than the European peasants, debt slaves, criminals, religious refugees, indentured service, and ones that were seen as expendable by their own kings and clergy to put in that role. They're desperate, and we can tell them anything. We just told them that we came to a new world and you have land, freedom, and wealth, and we haven't given it to them yet. But we're going to use them to do our dirty work. However, the poor whites were getting killed in massive number by the indigenous because the indigenous knew the land. So this is the beginning of when they start enlisting black people, so-called black people, into their militaries and allowing them to fight the wars. And we'll get to that later on. But cannon fodder for expansion, meaning they use them as power so that they can expand over here. They use them as a buffer class between the elite and the melanated original people. So this is where the middle class comes from. It's a creation so that they can, still keep them on a good hand to do what they, want to get done. The elite class didn't see them as equals. They just seen them as useful. I bet y'all never seen white people picking cotton before, did y'all? Every last one of these pictures are white people in the cotton field picking cotton because white people pick cotton too. Picking cotton was a poor man's job, but we pick cotton because we always pick cotton because we use the cotton for resources. So we taught them how to pick cotton. So the pictures they have of us making it look like they put us in the cotton field and had us doing it against our will was only after they stripped our identity. But I bet y'all never seen this in the school history book. This is what they had so-called white people doing. But they told you in school, they would have never, first of all, never showed you these pictures. But they told you in school that that was you doing that. And they showed you pictures of our people doing it. And again, that was after our people had been stripped completely of every part of their identity and into desperation, as with the people they have here doing it. The carrot, whiteness as a weapon. Whiteness was not a race, it was a contract. The system told poor European migrants, you're not rich, but at least you're not black. And that lie bought their loyalty, gave them access to just enough power to feel superior, and turned them into foot soldiers for supremacy without realizing they were still slaves, just with a slightly longer leash. They were programmed to police other poor people, join lynch mobs, as you see here, and vote for laws that hurt themselves just to hurt us more. That's the saddest part about it. They use the ignorance of these people against them. How they were indoctrinated. Religiously, they were taught that blackness equaled sin, darkness, and a curse of Ham. Legally, they were given land stolen from indigenous people and told they earned it. I know you guys remember what's that movie? They're here. And they lived in the house, Poltergeist. They lived in that house and it was haunted or whatever. And when it got to the end of it, where the lady was telling them like why it was haunted, it was because it was built on top of sacred Indian land.
Are
All
we
you gotta
talking
do,
about Poltergeist?
yes,
Oh, there it is with Carol Ann. Don't go into the
yeah,
light. Yeah. And you know that little girl, she died from, what
She
was it, a
died
bowel
traumatically.
obstruction? No,
Yes.
from a bowel obstruction. And she was throwing up her excrement, and they didn't get her to the hospital enough time. She was already DOA by the time they got to the hospital, right? Oh, she died. No. T said she died in the middle of surgery. But yeah, and a lot of people don't realize those movies are telling you the truth because they built that house on, they said, in ancient burial grounds. And it was coming
Indian
up out of
burial
the
ground.
swimming pool when they were in the pool part.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
So
was
if
just like,
you no, you good.
good.
If you look at if you look at a lot of the so-called white communities, you will see a lot of like destruction happen like that on a regular basis, especially up in California, where they have the landslides all the time. Like all of that stuff is ancient land. It is certain parts of and I'm gonna talk about the lakes and stuff when we get further down, but it's certain parts of land that they live on that is cursed, and that land is something always happening. Like in Oklahoma, they have massive tornadoes through the trailer parks. Like it's because they're living on indigenous land, stolen land, and you can't get away with something from people who are connected to the land. So when we cry, the earth knows how to register those tears. That's why we had those songs like Swing Low and Come By Here, not Kumbaya. They changed it to Kumbaya, but it was Come By Here. It's just the way we said it. But that's why we had those quote unquote Negro spirituals that we sung, because we connected to the land, and that brings, bro, they used to record us while we singing, because they like, what kind of soul do these people have to sound like this? We could hear every ounce of pain. This is why they go to poor areas to get people, like to make them rappers and singers and stuff, because they know that they can exploit them based off of their desperation. That's what they've been doing. They cannot, they don't have new tricks. They just recycle what they've been doing in different ways and in different systems. And once you realize how they divide and conquer, you'll see it in every system. You're going to see it everywhere. So let's get back into it. Culturally, because they were told that they were civilizing the savage, so they thought that they were really like doing something of justice. This gave them a sense of pride in their new land. And socially, by threatening them to be called white trash if they accepted or if they acted with solidarity. So if they started getting close to us, they would call them nigger lovers, or they would label them something that'll make them an outcast in the white community, which they couldn't have because they came here to build a life. So, but in truth, they were just as poor. They lived in shacks too. They were denied education, healthcare, and power just like us. And they were being farmed into a false identity that was weaponized to uphold a blood drinking elite class that they could never join. So it's like the mean girl using the using the girls under her, and then they can't sit with her at lunch. This is a mean girl tactic. So how they can help break the system? How today's whites, so-called whites, can help break the system if y'all choose truth over ego. The spell only breaks when those under it walk away from the perks of illusion. Poor and working class white people can acknowledge the false privilege they were handed, not wealth, illusion. They can refuse to be pawns in race-based manipulation. They can study real history, not whitewash education. They can protect truth tellers by not joining the mob. So if is any white people here that is in DTB, you guys are helping to protect this information. Stop gatekeeping sovereignty and instead align with law, land, and humanity. So the things and opportunities that you have to give to all of everybody, not just keep it within the white community. That is gatekeeping and is not right, because it was never yours to begin with, and you were also tricked. They must be willing to lose status to gain soul, and that's the shaky part. Because how many of you guys are actually willing to lose a status within your community to really connect back to who you truly are and the essence inside of you? That's the tricky part. Because if you guys knew the truth, then you realize that you were always more like us than the ones you served. That's the crazy part about it there. And then it could be more love, because you have to respect those you come from. It should not be, it should never be disrespect to a dark person, because that's your origin. But when you see race and you've been manipulated like everybody else, it's going to be hard to swallow that pill. And I get it, because it's a lot of people that look like me, they probably won't come to this understanding because they're still very upset about history. But our ancestors, they didn't die in vain. They died in ignorance. And they will want us, and they are actually helping us to get to the point where we see that unity is the only way. Unity through understanding and not denial. Poor whites are not the enemy until they choose to be by defending the lie. But when they realize the system would let them rot in a FEMA camp just as fast, that their kids are also being chemically and spiritually poisoned, and that they were never meant to inherit anything, just be the muscle to protect the elite, then they can unplug. Then they can help dismantle the matrix, not by pretending we're all the same, but by acknowledging the historical difference in treatment and choosing truth over tribalism. Because they don't care about y'all either. If you have to work and pay bills every month, you are poor. I don't care if you in the middle class and you live in a decent neighborhood. I live in a decent neighborhood too, but we all live in the same way. We still under a system that we don't want to be under, and we don't have to be under it. But the only way that that's going to happen is if we stop being the black and white pieces on their chessboard while they sitting back waiting. They're just the queen watching over the whole board, and we just pawning away. Like Morgan Freeman said, the guy asked him, what do you think about racism? He said, I don't think about racism. That's the problem. You keep thinking about it. You stop thinking about it, it'll go away. Yeah, because it don't exist. It exists because we're making it exist. Forgetting that we once lived together in communities, regardless of what we look like. I grew up around some very cool white people. I had white friends, and we all was poor, and we had fun, and we never ever discussed the color of our skin. We just played. When we had questions, we honestly would ask those questions. It would be no ill feelings or disrespect. It would just be out of curiosity because we are different, and we would answer the question. It was just like that. I know you guys remember in the 80s and 90s, race was not really, life was not revolved around racism in those times. It was like people just was living and having fun. Yeah, they tried to have these little police brutality moments, but because it was no social media, because it was TV was just old fashioned and it was no phones and stuff, it was no internet and all of that for people to be on all day. People really had relationships and really communed no matter what they look like. We always boogieing in the same disco. That's the beauty of America. The beauty of America is the fact that it is a nation of many faces. Like I said, if your people been here for 20 generations, you American. You match the soil now. You grafted in. And that's why it is no longer about your freaking color. It never was. It's about your status. And they have already mixed in. So there are white people who have some sovereign blood in them now. That's why they won't back down. That's why when they hear this information, they go full on patriotic. I mean, ex-patriotic. They used to be patriotic. They go ex-patriotic. They get completely dismissed from this system, and they begin to just be. It's a white guy named Jolly Ginger. He grew up in Appalachian Mountains, and he was saying how he grew up around dirty poor white trash. He's white, and they were all racist, and they taught him how to be racist. And he said, it's ending with me. I'm not doing that. And now he helps black people. He is an ally. He helps black people get stories out there and fights for justice for discrimination and wrongful deaths and stuff like that. And he has a huge platform. You think that it wasn't white people like that back when we was going through what we was going through? It was. They lied to you about the story a little bit when they told you about the Underground Railroad, but they did tell you that there were white people who was helping the black people, and that was true because that's how it was. They created and perpetuated all of these division tactics to keep us divided, including the so-called Native Americans who are on the reservations. They have beat them, and I mean literally beat them into hating us. They don't even have a real reason. They just going off the programming they were programmed with. So it's a long line of us being traumatized through this system. A very long line. And it's causing so much division within the United States that we are not united. We are divided states. That's what they should call us. because every state is its own entity in itself, the way they created it. And this is how they use the magic on you, because they name it something that they know it's the opposite of. The energy don't match the word, and they know that, and they did that on purpose. They named it united, but we actually are divided. That's on purpose. Everything they do is on purpose. But I'm gonna end right here, because if I go too far in, we gonna be going too far in. And we got 4 classes. So I don't want to give y'all too much, and we really went in. But it's really upsetting to see how far our nation has fell into race. Something that was literally created solely based off us not complying. That's it. So I hope that your eyes are open, and I hope that when you leave tonight, you're going to sleep on this, and when you get up, you're going to see the world differently. And you're going to operate in a world differently, because now, so-called Black people, you have an identity. And you can stand on this, because it's all through the history. All they did was just put a person in your place. So everything they told you happened to those Native Americans, just put yourself in that place, and now you know your story. It was literally just a swap out, identity swap. Literally, that's it. Just like they have rebranded themselves several times from being, if you look at the statue of Nebuchadnezzar that's in the book of Daniel, they have been every nation. They reclassify themselves. That's a part of their tactics in conquering. They are identity thieves. That's right. They steal identities of every civilization that they conquer. They take the identity of, and they have been trying to take our identity for a long time, and we are ones that is just not happening with. Even if we forget and we disconnect for a while, we always remember. But now we are here in a time where we have the power of the ancestors that they used against us, because they are sorry for what they've done. They now know that everything they did that they thought was for the greater good of us actually was for the detriment, and they are everything. Put it like this: we are everything they prayed for. We are the Messiah that they wanted to come to save the lineage. We are the Christ, white or black. If you came up in a family, which we all have, who have been manipulated and traumatized through this system, which I just broke down to you how we all have been, then you have the duty, when you learning this, you have the duty of breaking that curse, because everybody's not going to know this. Everybody is not meant to get this knowledge. Only those who are equipped to do what is necessary are the ones who are going to get this knowledge. And it's up to us to say, it ends with me. Racism ends with me, no matter what your color is, because you have these rhetorics in the Black community that says Black people can't be racist. We all can be racist, because racism was created and it's been perpetuated into us. So all of us can be racist, whether we want to admit it or not. That's when ego come in, when you say that you're not racist, but you are, because you are growing up and you have been groomed, and your parents been groomed, and your parents' parents and so on have been groomed and embedded with racism through stereotypes. And eventually the stereotypes become reality, because we hear them so much, not just in the Black community, but also in the white communities, where we have our ideologies about them. In the Mexican communities, in the Asian community. Y'all get what I'm saying? So it's a big mental game, and they've been playing it on your mind, and that's the way you've been. Basically, your prison cell has been your brain, and your brain has been keeping you arrested. And it's up to us to say no more. because the generation after us and every generation after us has to make America great again. And I don't mean to say that like I'm a Trump supporter, but when I hear "make America great again," I don't hear what everybody else hears. I'm not into politics. I see way beyond that. When I hear "make America great again," I remember America being a place where you felt comfortable, where people treated people nice. Period. It wasn't, oh, I like you because, no, it was, I gotta help you because you're in need, and I'm in a position to help, and I care about my fellow man because I care about myself. The nature of the Hebrew is love. Period. We are love. We are givers. That's how we got usurped. We are genuine souls who have been turned into traumatized narcissists, and now we have a victim mindset that makes us blame everything on the white man. But we don't take no accountability of what we did to ourselves to get in this situation, because we betrayed who we are. We betrayed our ancestors by praising Jesus and going to church and calling on God. We betrayed our own souls and spirits by praising a God in the sky, which is the God of their system, which is the rings of Saturn. That's why when you get married, they make you put rings on your finger, because those rings represent Saturn. And Saturn is a matrix. So they making us marry the state. The state is the matrix. We're not speaking our language, which holds the frequencies and powers for us to call rain from the sky. We speaking a dead language, so we cursing ourselves every day. But when you have that knowledge to know that this is a game, and now I can see, like, by being war, okay, since I've been alive, I was born in 1990. We done been through a few wars. And one thing I noticed how America get down, they do the same thing every time. They do the same thing every time. They bully. They bully, they bully, they bully, and then how they bully is through the media. They make their opponent look real bad and that's reclassification. They first before they do that though, they get close to you and they work with you and they do some good deals. And then when you drop your guard, that's when they reclassify you and they usurp you. Most of their opponents, they throw up the white flag and give in and allow and join with them and say, well, you can't beat them, join them. Except us. We said you can't beat them, join them. No. You can't beat them, make your own. And every time we made our own, they took it away. And they said, oh, it's time for another reclassification. They getting too strong and they remembering and they going back to who they are. So they take it away from us every time. Because now it's time for us to see what it is your ancestors are working through you. Honor them. Even if you don't know them, they are in you. And that's why you are here. You wouldn't be here no other reason. It's them that's helping you because they are the ones who made the mistakes to get our families into these contracts. I'm talking both black and white, Indian, Mexican, whatever you want to. I'm talking about all nations who have been in America for the past 500 years. You have been put into a blood ritual that was kicked off through war, and your lineage have been placed into that contract, and you are the generational contract breaker, the generational curse breaker. You came to break the contract. This is why you're doing these processes. This is why you're doing status correction in private banking, because you're going back to your original way, the original way of America, where everybody was free, where everybody self-governed themselves, where everybody acted privately and minded their business. And we lived in tribes and community on one accord. We're going back to the original ways where women were in charge. There's nothing wrong with women leadership if the women know who they are. There's something wrong with it when the women don't know who they are. But we are far connected from who we are. There are. I'm gonna talk about in the next we probably get to it in the next class, but I'll be talking about the Salem witch trials. I'll be talking about how we had magic. We had black magic and they had white magic. And they came from pagans and Celts. They had their own magic. They got connections to fairies and certain guardians in the forest. So don't let them give you these division techniques and tactics and keep trying to say that white people don't have this and don't have that. They do so. White women have a power that can be very convincing. This is why you have Karens that can get you arrested and play like they play like you did something to them, and it becomes believable because it's a magic that they have. They don't even know that they're using because they forgot who they are. Same with our women, and our women manifested through anger. That's why they call us the angry black woman, because ours come through our root chakra from all of the trauma that we've been through. It manifests as anger. But the more that we disconnect from who we are, the weaker we get. And the more that the white woman connects with the melanin and the melanated man and herself, because white women, yeah, they go and get enhancements and stuff, but black women have been taught to hate their appearance. So we get enhancements on a level that's ridiculous. Especially with our women getting BBLs and stuff and lip fillers. And once I seen that, I'm like, yeah, we totally disconnected from who we are. Because why are you getting something you don't need? To look like the Europeans that they're putting in your face? That's crazy. That's crazy. And the Europeans is getting this stuff so they can look like you. And you getting it because you want to look like these Kardashians and Instagram models. Girl, and also, you say you're a white woman and you're angry. It could also be based on your blood. So you could be Italian. Italians are known for being angry. And it's not like they angry because they mean. They angry because that's just their nature. They are passionate people. Gotta connect back to your roots. There you go, Sicilian. There you go. I already know my husband is his my husband's father is from South Sicily. So yes, a lot of it without even trying. But I'm trying to tell y'all, it is go back to your roots. Go back to, if you are from America, connect to America. If you are from Germany, Serbia, Sicily, like go back to go back to your roots. You have ancestors that have been betrayed. You think they don't know they've been betrayed? They have been betrayed and they know it. They know it. And they're upset. And they're going to help us. Because they did something thinking they were going to, they think they were going to, you know, make a better way. And it just trapped us deeper into a system they weren't aware of that was being created based off of them. And they locked us into these contracts, and generation after generation, we just living this American dream. And eventually we waking up from the dream because the dream ain't dreaming no more. It's not dreaming no more. It's getting real when we starting to feel it, and we like, hold up, what happened to this? What happened to that? This ain't adding up. Y'all said this, but now y'all saying that. So connect back to your nature. You women specifically are connected directly to the universe. Our cycles are connected to the moon cycle. You think that's by design? The Salem witch trials were to not just to kill off white witches, they were killing off all witches, including so-called black witches. And they was killing us because we were using our magic together. That's why Louisiana is a beautiful place, because in the bayous, you got French, you got mulattoes, you got Creoles, you got Indians, you got a mix of people who show you what resilience look like. And it don't show color, it shows community. It show, yes, Cajun. It shows community, and they all have their own magic and their own power, and they use it as a community, and that's a real reason why that place is targeted a lot. Baltimore is that way too, where I'm from. We got Irish, Italian, we got Little Italy, we got Chinatown, we got Koreans. We all commingle. We all poor, and we live in the same neighborhoods, and we all live together, and we fight together when we need to. It's right. America was known as a melting pot. This is the only nation of all nations. This is the only nation of many faces. Every other nation has a majority of people that look the same. This is the only nation of many nations that came together. Because at the end of this story, that's what it was about. It's about unity. Because we all here up under the same sun, the same moon, the same stars, the same earth, living off of the same resources. So at what point are we going to drop the tribalism and become a community? Because everything that we were doing, specifically Europeans were doing before America, was tribalistic, and it was all based off of survival because of the conditions that they were put under, and under the same oppressor. This is all under the same oppressor. So that oppressor, they gotta pay, bro. They can't keep doing this. I'm not okay with it. I'm tired of, when I lived in Texas, people said Texas was racist, and for the first 2 years I didn't see it. And maybe it's because I wasn't looking for it, but the last year I lived in Texas, I saw it, and it pissed me off to a point of tears, because I just didn't understand how people could just prejudge somebody based off of a color. And it's like a hue. It's not a color, it's just a hue. Like, I'm just slightly tanner than you. And it just didn't make sense to me. So I guess if I get hit by a car in front of you, you're gonna watch me die. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of stuff. It's what makes you a human. What makes you connected to Mother Earth? Because we all eating from her. Melanated people were here first all over the world. Yes, that's a fact. But that's not the case no more. What's gonna happen now? Because we can't kill off people that don't look like us. We don't live in those times no more. And whoever's not matching the frequency of the earth, she gonna get rid of them. We ain't got to do anything. Our job is to create the new earth and a new frequency so that we can make America great again. I keep saying it, but it's a good slogan. That's why he got it. And again, I'm not into politics or nothing. It's just a good slogan. It's time for us to it's time for us to get back to humanity overall. Yes, we are Moors. Yes, we are Indians. Yes, we are Hebrews. We are Egyptians. We have had many names. But at the end of the day, it's time for us to go back to our true nature. They are just classifications of the vessels we use through this timeline. Now it's time to go back to who we truly are, which is the Elohim. And we gotta play that role, because that's who we are. The earth ain't gonna clean itself up without us. So our community specifically have to start with loving themselves. And again, it's not gonna happen across the board. We're gonna lose this. It's been so many generations, 20 generations of people have been brainwashed. So there are a lot of them that's not going to translate over, and that's fine, because they got dialed with the old ways. But what are we going to do for the new ones coming in? That's what I'm worried about. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's presentation. I will be posting a replay on YouTube. So tomorrow it should be on there, and I'll post it and let you guys know. But I hope this information is opening your mind in ways that you probably didn't expect and allowing you to see the world with a new set of eyes. Because at the end of the day, it's about unity. And if we can't unify to come out of the system that's been oppressing us all and gaslighting us and literally just mind tricking us all, if we can't see that, it's no way that we going to get out of this. And the only way, in my opinion, is through unifying through our differences. We are different, and that's okay. That's the beauty of it. That's what diversity is. Accept the differences. We got to stop letting racism live, because racism only lives because we're giving it light and power. We got to let it go. We got to drop the titles, because I'm not black, you're not white. We are spirits in a human body experiencing this, and we're using this body as a vessel to get it done. We're not supposed to get stuck and trapped in the appearance of these bodies. In all honesty, I don't even think we're supposed to know what we look like. I think mirrors are a creation of vanity to keep us trapped into these bodies, honestly. I think we're just supposed to exist and be the greatest of being. That's right. That's what I think. So I don't want to like try to impose my thoughts on anybody, but I see the future being a better place when we become one again as a whole and stop allowing the oppressors to oppress us systemically in different ways. Again, like I said, some people have more suppression than others, but we can all agree that we all been suppressed and lied to. That's one thing we can agree across the board. We all have family issues. I bet you everybody here has a family member that's on drugs or incarcerated or mental illnesses, if it ain't yourself, or alcoholic, abusive. Each one of us have experienced that in some form or fashion. So to say that one struggle is stronger than the other, we're not the same. Some people can handle more. A person that, people that used to say, God not going to put more on you than you can handle. They're telling you about your strength and your power. So some of us had a harder struggle. That means we got a greater victory, but we can all agree that all of us have a struggle, had a struggle, experienced a struggle, been through some type of something, and that is where we're going to unite in understanding that the common enemy is never was the man that looks different than you by hue, but it was the one you can't see. The one that's hiding, throwing rocks and hiding his hand. The one that got sin, but he's throwing the rocks anyway. It's always the one you can't see. So keep in mind when you go out into the world, and like I said, I hope this help you to see the world in a different place. And when you feel yourself about to think of something that's it's not your thought, but it been perpetuated on you for so long that it could come up. I'm a realist. I'm not gonna fake and act like I don't have racist thoughts. I do. I told you how I was raised. I told you how my mindset was. So I'm not going to fake and act like I've never said anything racist. I have plenty times. But when it comes in my mind, now that I'm conscious of it, I'm not going to give it life, because it's not me, and it never was. Because when I was a kid, I didn't give a crap what nobody looked like. If you was nice, I was nice back. If you was mean, I was mean back. And that was it. I didn't never say, oh, I don't like you because you this, or like, no, I never had that. I didn't have that until I was programmed to have that. And I was programmed to have that by my parents, who was programmed to have that by their parents, who was programmed to have that, and so on. So I try not to impose that like rhetoric no more, because we the ones keeping it alive. And I take full accountability for anything I've said out the way about any race, including my own, because I talk crap about my own before too. And we throwing race out the window. Ain't no color. It's spirit. It's frequency. So if you on that frequency, you one of them ones. And we not keeping it alive no more. So I changed my name to reflect the changes that I will be making in this community, because I'm about growing outside of the internet, and I'm trying to make that a reality every day. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's presentation. We're going to be back at it next Saturday. We're going to go even deeper. Every Saturday is going to get deeper. So if you think we got deep tonight, get ready for next Saturday. I appreciate all of y'all for being here, especially y'all on Eastern time. And I hope to see you guys throughout the week in the chat. Much success, love, and peace to everybody. Connect back to your ancestors. Everybody, connect back to your source. Go back to your origin. Black people, so-called Black people, you got an identity now. It's time to start connecting. Much gratitude for everybody being here. I'll see y'all later. Have a wonderful night and rest of y'all weekend.